second, recording. Okay, so this is the being taped, the recording of the walkthrough on the real actual devices in the SBUS 1125 classroom for this first lab 1.1.7, which is this PCA and the switch connected to each other. And then the lab, they talk about, we're seeing the lab here, the lab, they talk about a special command we haven't talked about much anymore here, but by default, the switches only support IP version 4. We want to put an IP version 6 SVI management address on it. So we're going to do something to it to do this. Now, first of all, I'm going to bring up my Terra term. And it looks like the switch is erased. So let's check and make sure the switch is totally erased. The first thing I'm going to do is go to the privilege exec mode. And I'm going to type the show startup command. There is no startup configuration in the VLAN. Good. If it had been previously configured and the student forgot to erase it, it would probably be asking you for password, something like that. Okay, the second thing we're going to check is I'm going to type the dir command. That's exactly the same thing as show flash. I want to see the flash file system and the files that are in it. Oops. And I'm looking for the presence of a file named VLAN.dat, VLAN.dat, and it's not there. If it were there, it's not enough just to erase the startup configuration file. If someone has created a non-default VLAN configuration on this device, in other words, by default on switches, all ports are assigned to VLAN 1 out of the box, which is okay for small, medium-sized businesses that never configure the switch. But in a larger enterprise where you're creating VLANs, as soon as you create any VLAN at all, I'll show you what it does. I'll go to the configure mode, and I'll say VLAN 99. And I'll go back and do that command again. Now there's a new file, VLAN.dat. Okay, that could mess up your lab if it wasn't the exact same VLAN configuration. So to get rid of that file, I'm going to type the command delete VLAN.dat and press enter 3 times. Now when we do the check your directory command, the text. Okay, good. Now, before I reboot the switch, because anytime you have to erase the VLAN.bat file and or erase the startup configuration file, you should do a reload command on the switch and make it boot up again. That takes about 2 or 3 minutes. On the packet tracer, it does it real fast. It does it in about 5 seconds. But in the purpose of this lab, you remember on this thing here, it says we have to go and turn on this support for IP version 6 management addresses. So I'm going to go into the switch. I'll go back to the switch. Let me do it that way. Okay. I'm going to do show SDM preferences. It's the default. Only IP version 4 is supported. I will not be able to apply an IP version 6 switch profile to this switch. So I'm going to change that profile to dual IPv4 and IPv6 so I can do that. I got to go to the configuration mode. And then I got to say SDM preference dual default. Have been stored, but will not take effect until the next reboot, the next reload. Okay. So now I don't have to do copy run start. This is stored in a separate place. So now I'm going to reboot the switch, and I can't do reload command from the configuration mode. I got to do it from just a plain old privilege. So I'm going to type reload. It's going to warn me I've done some commands. Do I want to save them? I'm going to say no. Proceed. While that's booting up, that takes about 3 minutes. It's kind of annoying. So let's go to our virtual PC. Here's my PC 8. And on the front page of the lab, it has some commands that we're going to do to set up this virtual PC. The 2 or 3 minutes here, I'm going to use on the virtual PC so we don't waste time. So I'm going to go, and on the virtual VMs, there's a thing that says Cisco Lab Shortcut. Normally, you would click Start, Programs, Control Panel, and go find the network control panel stuff. This is a quicker way of getting to what I put on there. Another guru secret insider tip is type in cpa.cpl in the run box. It'll take you straight there. I'll use the network shortcut. So what happens when I click this? I get this Cisco-Lab is the name of the NIC card in this VM. I'm going to click Properties, and there's our familiar Properties thing. Okay. So I want to go and I make sure IP version 6 is enabled for this lab. We're going to use that. and I'm going to go to IP version 4. And there's some other IP address in there. Maybe the last student that used it has some other IP address. The quick way of getting rid of that is to click the Obtain button and then click the Use button, and that will wipe out the previous configuration. And I'm going to go ahead and start now and go ahead and configure that IP address for PCA. It's supposed to be 192.168, 1.10. He automatically figures out it should be 255.255.255. And there is no default gateway required for this lab because there's no router in this lab. So I'll click OK. And then I'm going to go to IP version 6. And we're going to use the following address. I'm going to click Use the following address. I'm going to put in that FE80, FE80, : 3. I'll put that address in for now. And I'll click OK. Now let's check, like Reagan said, trust but verify. I'll bring up my command prompt, and I'm going to type ipconfig. And that shows me, look, I have 192.168.1.10. And it's a proper subnet mask. And I have the FE80 : 3 address. Okay, we should be good for now. We might add more addresses later. Okay, has my switch finished booting by now? It should have been enough time for it to oh, it's still kind of booting up here. So we did this first step where we did the configure terminal, SDN prefer. It's almost ready to go. So part 1, cable the network. I have cabled the network for you. So in these uncertain times of the virus, I can't let you touch the wires. Sorry about that. They spray disinfectant to the room every time you leave. It's probably okay, but I'm gonna configure them for you like you do in the NetLab. So it says, do not connect the PCA Ethernet cable at this time. Well, it's actually been plugged in. You can pull your plug loose from your red plug at your workstation if you want to do it, but he's going to tell you to use a no shutdown command instead. You have already connected to the switch from PCA using TerraTerm. I walked you guys through that. Why? He says, why is it not possible to connect to the switch by telling it a secure shell right now? Why? You don't have any IP address yet. Don't have any network connectivity yet. It's just a basic switch. Okay, so let's verify the default switch configuration. So we're going to go to the, is he ready here? Is he going to let me do something? Okay, it looks like the switch is totally erased. You get this little thing on the switch, a brand new switch from the factory that says, oh, you should set passwords to it and so forth. And do you want to go into the initial configuration dialog, which we always say no to. I'll say in or no works. Oh, the switch is default. Is it still? I'm going to go to the privilege exec mode. He told me to do that. If I do a show startup, there's nothing there. If I do the dr command, the VLAN.dat file is not there. Now let's do that show SDM preferences. It's show SDM preferences. It's dual. It's dual. We'll be able to put our IP version 6 in it later when he asks us to do this. Okay, so if I type show run, that's show run. That's just the default ready configuration. Yes, yes, sir. Let's do that. Let's do that later when we get that step. Don't worry about that. Just do that. Just make sure the IP version works clear. I'm taping here, so I don't. People at home, I don't want to disappoint them. Okay, so here's the default configuration. There's something plugged into port 6. If I do a show IP interface brief, see port 6 is up and up. That's because your PCA is plugged into port 6. Okay, he's going to ask you to unplug it and load it. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these other commands and go to the basic configuration. In part 2 on page 5 of the lab, we're going to configure some basic network settings. So step 1, he's given us some commands here to type in. If you're skilled with copy and paste, you can actually paste stuff in. If you have the Microsoft Word document up on one screen and you have the TerraTerm on another screen, you can actually copy and paste, but I'm going to just go ahead and type them in. So we're supposed to give it a host name. I'll go to configuration mode, config T, and type no IP domain lookup. Oops. No. IP. Domain. Lookup. That way, if I make a typing error, it doesn't try to tell that to that typing error. And let's give it a host name. Host name S1. Service password encryption. So any passwords that's not the enable secret password that is shown on the screen will not be in plain text. Enable secret class. That's going to be the password to take you from the user exec mode to the privilege exec mode. And then we'll do a banner message of the day. Banner message of the day. And I'll use the, in the lab printout, he uses the delimiter character of the pound sign, the tic-tac-toe symbol. I'll put my little favorite message I put. And then I'm going to do a copy run start real fast here to illustrate what happens, what we've done so far. Okay, I'm logging out of the switch. Or I even log into the switch. Warning, Will Robinson. Okay. Now let me get to the privilege exec mode. I'll type enable. Oh, what's that password? We always use the same password. It's always class to get to the privilege exec mode. And later on, we're going to set a password even to get to the console port. Now let's set the IP address of the switch. We're going to go and create VLAN 99. Now that's just a thing we use in the Academy. It can be any number you want to. The good practice is don't use VLAN 1, which is the default VLAN. Make some other VLAN and make it your management VLAN. So I'm going to go to the configuration mode and say interface VLAN 99. Now I'm going to assign my port 6 to VLAN 99 because that's what my PC is plugged into. I think I'm supposed to assign it to that. Or all ports are supposed to be assigned to VLAN 99. So let's see. I don't want to do that 24 times. Didn't we have a technique to do something on a bunch of ports in one fell swoop? Something about interface range. I've got my caps lock on. Interface range, fast Ethernet 0/1 through 24. Now the prompt has changed to config-if range. Okay, switch port, access, VLAN. There. Now let's check. Show VLANs. All the 24 Ethernet ports have been assigned to VLAN 99. There's 2 other ports I didn't do. There's 2 gigabit ports at the end of the switch. You can put a fiber transceiver if you want to. They're still in VLAN number 1. Okay, so show VLAN shows that those ports are in VLAN 99. And let's configure the default gateway for, even though there's no router in this lab, we're just going to practice doing this. So configure terminal, IP default gateway is supposed to be 192.168.1.1. Is that it? If this lab had a router, it would be 192.168.1.1. So that way you could connect telnet to the switch from another device through the routers. Okay, now let's set the password for a router. He's going to tell us to do a little thing here. Configure terminal, line console 0, logging synchronous, so that if you're in the middle of typing a line and when you type no shutdown, it pops up on the screen right in the middle, typing up your next command. It's very annoying and disconcerting. Well, if you type this command, it will automatically replace your command you were typing on the new line, and you won't have to type it over again. Oh, you guys have got to press enter still all over again. Now let's see. He didn't tell us to do this yet, but I'm going to go ahead and do this. Password Cisco login. So that way, I'll do a quick copy run start. I want to log off. Remember last time he didn't ask me? I got the warning, Will Robinson. Now I have to put in the password even to get to the console port. What's Cisco? And now I'll type the password to get to the privilege exec mode. That's class. Oops. There we go. Okay, let's see. We already configured our IP address on a PCA. Oh, he said I didn't read the directions carefully enough here. We're supposed to use FE80::1 on the PC to simulate being a router that would be at FE80::1. So I'm gonna go back to my PC and I'll do that. I made it FE80::3. So I'll go into the properties and IP version 6, and I'm going to change that to FE80::1. That's just something to ping. Okay, and we'll check with IP config. Sometimes on these virtual machines, it doesn't take really good, and you got to like shut down and do the port again. FE80::, okay, it's still there. And notice that FE80::3 is still there too. Windows holds on to these addresses for dear life. Okay, yeah, part 3 on page 6 of the lab. Do the show run command and show the configuration, the entire configuration of the switch itself. Show running config. This is the thing that's several pages usually. So we have our enable secret class, and the word class has been encrypted. You can't tell what that is if you didn't know. All our ports have been assigned to VLAN 99. We've assigned the 192.168.1.1 as a default gateway address. And then the lab gives you a printout for this. Now, the one thing I didn't do yet, I don't remember him telling me this, I need to assign that management address to the switch. I made the VLAN 99, but I didn't give it an IP address yet. So let me go to configure terminal and say interface VLAN 99 and give an IP address. And the switch is supposed to be 192.168.1.2, 255.2.0, and we'll do a no shutdown on that VLAN because it has to be activated. And then let me see if it allows me to do the IPv6 address. IPv6 address, FE80::2, 2, and call this a link local address. Okay, so the question here at the top of page 8, what is the bandwidth on the interface? We need to type the command show interface VLAN 99. What is the bandwidth on it? Well, the bandwidth listed there is 1 looks like 1 million kilobit per second. It's a gigabit speed. What's the other question? What is the VLAN 99 state? It is up and up. I did type no shutdown. If I had failed to type no shutdown, what would it say? Administratively down. Because on the switch, all the ports work, but except for the management address that you put in, you have to do a no shutdown on that. What is the line protocol state? It's up and up, so it's ready to send and receive traffic. Now we're going to do some pinging from the PC, virtual machine PC, and see if we can connect, if we can ping that device. First of all, I'm supposed to ping my very own address, 192.168.1.10. That's my own address. That's okay. And the loopback port, that should be up, right? 127.0.0.1. That's okay. That would work even if the wire was unplugged. Now, first real communication from the VMware machine through that yellow wire that comes out of the back of your PC and goes into the red plug, goes to the back of the rack and connects to your switch. And we're going to ping the switch's address, 192.168. Isn't it 1.2? Oh no. Oh, what happened? It made so long. I thought we were heading. Well, what happened? What protocol caused that temporary moment of terror? Notice when I do it again, it's perfect. Address resolution protocol had to synchronize the layer 2 physical MAC address with the layer 3 IP address. And that typically causes the first ping to fail. And then subsequent pings are fine. So if I do it now, how long is ARP held in the memory of your workstation? About 3 minutes. So if you waited 3 minutes and typed the ping again, you would again get that first failure. Okay, now we're going to do remote management. He didn't give us the code here to type it. I'm going to put it in here. So we need to configure the switch to accept some remote management. So I'm going to go back in to the switch and go configure terminal. Let me illustrate how to do show run. I'm going to show run. Very in here. Remember I put in the password for the console port? Find console 0. Password, it says it's encrypted. We use service password encryption. It's Cisco. Now I want to add similar code for the VTYs. That's coming in through the management address. Okay, I haven't set them yet. I will not be able to do that. So I'll go to the configuration mode and say line VTY 0 through 15 and say password Cisco and the login command. And on these newer routers, since you recall, since we got these newer routers, there was another thing I had to do. Let's see if I can get in with it here. I'm going to use the telnet command. Where's my DOS prompt? Here it is. Telnet should be in here. Telnet 192.168.1.2. So I've got the warning message. I got the access verification message. What's the password, Cisco? I'm remotely tied in now through IP, through networking packets to that switch. Well, I'll type the enable command. Should be class. So that worked fine. I want to get out of that, I'll type the word exit. And I've lost the connection. Now, in part 4 of the lab, you're going to look at the MAC address table. You're going to look at the MAC address tables that he set up. The switches only have one MAC address table, and that is my VM PC. Now, sometimes with these VMs in your lab, you've actually got a ghost VM that's MAC addresses in the VM, and you have a second real physical address that's on the hardware of the PC. So sometimes you have two of them. So let's determine the MAC address that the switches learn. I'm going to go to the top of page 9. I'm going to go back to the Terraterm console to get directly connected to the switch. I'm going to type command show MAC address table. But ignore all those at the beginning where it says static. We want the dynamic. Oh, we got a dynamic. What port is our PC plugged into? Was it at port 6? FA0/6? Yeah. And there's the MAC address he's detected for that PC. Well, it ends with C18A. So let's jump over to the PC. And how do you tell the MAC address of a PC? ipconfig/all. C18A, was that it? C18A, it's a match. So the MAC address of the virtual PC, he thinks his MAC address is ending in C18A, 8A. And that's what he picked up and put in his MAC address table. How long will the switch hold on to that MAC address? Because you could pull your PC out and go to the library. It holds on to it for about 5 minutes, and then it'll vanish from the MAC address table. So there's a bunch of static addresses in there, and you're supposed to count them up and put the answer. How many dynamic addresses there? Just the one for the PC. It is possible to set up a static MAC address, which will prevent this ARP business from occurring, the ARP timeout. And typically, this is done in the real production world. We'll set up a static MAC address entry for a server. The problem is, if we get a new server, now we got to go into our switches and we got to rekey in those MAC addresses. But it is possible to do this. It slightly improves the performance. So you can remove it. And most iOS commands that do anything, if you want to get rid of them, you can type in the entire address command again and just put the word no in front of it. No IP address, and you'll take it out of there. Okay, there are some reflection questions at the end of the lab. I do not require the reflection questions. This is a technical class. This is not a how do you feel about this class. So you don't have to answer the reflection questions. Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to stop the recording. Oh, before I stop that, let me do one thing. When you're done with the lab, what should you do to not make the other advanced Cisco students mad? Oh, you're the advanced Cisco students now. To not confuse and confound the poor fundamental students that are taking this course for the first time on Mondays and Wednesdays. You guys are veterans. You've been here before. So what should I do with the switch? I should delete all the configuration on the switch. So do I have a startup configuration? Yes, I do. I should delete it. So I'm going to do erase, start configuration. It prompts me to press enter 2 times because this is kind of a dangerous. If you're doing this on a real machine, you don't do it, not unless you split. Don't do it unless you have a good reason to. Now, what was the other thing I had to delete? The VLAN, delete VLAN that. And this one, you have to press enter, and he says, really want to do it? You really want to do it? I got to press enter 3 times. Now it's deleted. Now, when the switch is turned off and turned again by the poor fundamental student in the Monday, Wednesday class, he won't be confused. Password? I don't know what password that is. They haven't even learned about Cisco in class yet. Okay, Mark's going to stop the recording now.